Hey everybody! Welcome to the Good Evening Kitties podcast, a Tales from the Crypt review. My name is Melissa, your ghostess with the mostest, and today's episode is Season 5, Episode 12, Halfway Horrible. It's really more like all the way horrible, am I right? A little bit. The episode's fine. It really didn't stand out too much to me. I did remember the ending, but all in all, the episode kind of didn't seem like it really needed to be made. I mean, it was fine. So I'll get into it, but there are a couple points that I do want to talk about that did stand out to me on the episode as a whole, but I definitely wouldn't be putting it in any of my top lists anytime soon. So again, like I said, Season 5, Episode 12, Halfway Horrible. Let's talk about it. As always, John Kassir does the voice of the Crypt Keeper and Danny Elfman does the theme song. This episode aired December 1st, 1993. It was directed by Gregory Wyden. The only other thing he directed was the movie The Prophecy. The screenplay is also by Gregory Wyden. He tends to be more of a writer. It stars Clancy Brown from movies like Pet Sematary 2 and TV's Carnival, Martin Kove from movies like The Karate Kid, Costas Mandylor from movies like Saw 4, Charles Martin Smith from movies like American Graffiti, John Tenney from movies like Tombstone, Brian Wimmer from movies like Tank Girl, and Cheech Marin is Cheech Marin, Cheech and Chong, and also TV's Judging Amy. This one gets a little confusing because there's so many people for me a little bit. Well, and the fact that I don't know if they mess up the name or I guess he's calling him by his last name, but I got Colin confused, played by Charles Martin Smith, because they kept calling him Howard, but I think he's supposed to be Colin, but maybe his name's Colin Howard. I don't think I caught that, so I was a little confused by that. So I'm going to go ahead here and read the description of Halfway Horrible on the back of the box. A biz exec wants to market a preservative that keeps food from spoiling forever. Maybe food's not the only thing that won't perish. So this episode opens up with the Crypt Keeper, and it's kind of cute because he's in like leopard print with like this leopard strip bandana thing on his hair, and he's got earrings in, and he works at a salon. So he's doing someone's hair. But this time, instead of like a skeleton in the seat, it's a woman. But I guess the mannequin of a woman instead of bones. But he has done like a hairdryer thing on her, and that hairdryer's come up, and now her head is a shrunken head. So it's a shrunken head on a body. He burnt her too much, you know. And what's cute about this one is in the back, it says the name of the place is Veded Sassoon, which I believe would be a play on Vidal Sassoon, which was a hair product company. Also, Vidal Sassoon was a guy who started the company. He found Sassoon and all the hair products. He was known for creating bringing back the bob cut. He cut Mia Farrow's hair for Rosemary's Baby in 1968, so that's kind of cool. And then just different other cuts, and then he just kind of went from there and had his own company and things like that. So it's kind of a fun little nod, Veded Sassoon. So the episode here opens up, and Clancy Brown, who plays Roger, is there with Martin Kove, who's the detective, and they're at a morgue, and they're pulling the body out on a slab from the freezer, and it doesn't look great. Body's not super great looking. It's bloated kinda and discolored, and the detective and Roger are standing there. Roger's supposed to identify the body. So what has happened is some of his business associates or things like that are starting to die or get murdered. And since he knew this guy, he was brought in to identify him, and he identifies him as Dan King, who is Costas Mandylor. So the detective's like, well, what's this? And so you look down, and there's this shiny blue stuff that's kind of like Reanimator, but blue, and it's pretty color. Not quite as dark as the movie Brain Damage, but it's pretty. And he touches it, and he's like, he was hit with 40 cc's of your preservative, and that's what this stuff is. And that's what killed him. But apparently the detective's like, apparently his head won't rot for 100 years. And I'm like, it still looks pretty bad. A lot of the heads in here look kind of bad.
What's in this shit?
Well, basically it's a herb from the rainforest.
Found this in his pocket. I have not forgotten or forgiven. At first we thought it was suicide, but his handwriting isn't matching. Mean anything to you?
It's a note, it's a threat, and there's pretty certain that it's aimed to Roger. And along with this note too, so they put the body back in, and along with this note too, there's also a photo. And then at this time too, Roger's having this severe headache. He asks the detective for an aspirin, takes the aspirin. There's a lot of aspirin in this. There's a buttload of aspirin in this episode. There's also a mark on Dan King's body that's kind of like a tribal rune type mark too. So with this picture that was also found with the body, it's a picture of 4 guys. So one is Roger, and then you have Dan King, and then you have a guy named Alex and a guy named Kevin. And Alex had passed away when they were in Brazil. This photo was taken in Brazil. So he's like, yeah, we went to Brazil and Alex died out there and everything. And the detective's like, well, what's in this preservative? And he's like, it's an herb that we got from out in Brazil and things like that. It was crazy. These are my business associates. And so then the episode jumps back 6 years. Ritual episode, another voodoo type episode, but this time we're in Brazil. So I was like, oh, okay, because usually it's Haiti, or there's been a couple other places too that they've had in these episodes. So it was interesting to see a different place. So it cuts to 6 years earlier, and we're seeing it. It's not just being told, we're seeing it. And there's a fire, and it's dark, and there's indigenous people there, and they have a bowl of that shiny or that glowing blue material, liquid. And one of their tribe members, or members of their group, is in like this upright coffin thing. Clancy Brown helps them with the ritual. They have this guy drink it. I believe they bury him afterwards. It's supposed to like revive him to be a zombie, keep him preserved, but then reanimate him, I suppose. It's a lot of, I'm not sure exactly how he was able to transfer it into keeping other things preserved. They don't really go too far into it. I mean, the episode's only like 22 minutes long or something. Anyway, so while Clancy Brown, Roger, is giving this guy this blue liquid and it's like flowing down him as he drinks it, like down his chest. Like, he's not a great drinker. Like, it's all over his mouth and it's really viscous and stuff. The other 3 guys, Dan, Alex, and Kevin, are like, this is crazy. What are we doing? I thought we came out here to learn and like be with these people or whatever, you know, and they're like, this is evil. We're going to go to hell for this. This is not cool.
You've taken us to a place we can't turn back from, Roger. This side of you, it's evil.
All the way. We came down here to go all the way.
Everybody has an evil side. Secret's just learning how to keep it on a leash.
And then Roger's like, shut up. These 4 guys go into this business deal. I guess they heard about this herb or something and they thought they could make some sort of business from it, especially Roger. So now it cuts back to present day and Roger goes home. He's had a long day. When I rewatched this episode, I remembered this, and he comes home and his apartment's been ransacked. Everything's been like moved around and flipped, and there's graffiti on the wall that says, I have not forgotten or forgiven. So this is definitely a repeat of earlier. And on top of what I think it's his TV, is a small voodoo doll, but it's like a little man in a business suit, and half of him is like red, like a little devil with little horns, and then the other half is just like a bald man in a business suit. So he calls the detective back. He's like, someone's obviously leaving me a message. This is for me. And they're trying to figure out like why now this is happening, who would maybe be out to get him. It's been 6 years, you know, why out of the blue? But then you do find out that Clancy Brown's character is waiting for FDA approval. Like, they've been through all the work. They put all the work into doing these experimental reviews and things. The product's working. They need to just get FDA approval and guidelines and things, and then they should be able to kick it off. And now all this stuff is happening. So the detective shows up, and it's funny. Like, there's cops there too, and they're kind of like checking out the place, probably getting fingerprints or whatever, I don't know. And the cop is showing up, and I think he's eating yogurt at the robbery scene. He just shows up with this like little teeny cup of yogurt or pudding, and he just sits down next to Roger, and he's like, hey, how's it going? Like, you interrupted my yogurt time, but here I am in my suit eating a little cup of something. And Clancy Brown's having another headache, and he's still like taking all his aspirin and things. And yeah, so they're sitting there and they're talking, and eventually the detective's like, who else would be doing this? So Alex died in Brazil. Dan is dead now. Who else would be here trying to do something against you and things after all this time? Who would know where you live? And so Roger's trying to figure that out. And he's also kind of remembering now back to some other stuff going on in Brazil. And so it cuts back to Brazil 6 years earlier. And you got 2 of the guys here, and they're putting this flower into that blue glowing goo, right? And it kind of reminds me of the episode Curiosity Killed, season 4, episode 14, where they used flowers or bulbs that they grew on a dead body to make this potion to live longer, or to be young again, I suppose, to be young again. So Roger shows up to these 2 guys while they're doing this, and he's talking to them, and he starts saying something. He's saying this to Kevin and Dan. So he shows up to Kevin and Dan while they're preparing the liquid or whatever, and he's like, hey, there's been some crazy stuff with the government here in Brazil and our passports, and like Alex had to leave and go back home, and we're just gonna keep going. And the guys don't really buy it. They're like, why would Alex just leave without saying anything? Like, that doesn't make any sense. We haven't heard anything about anything, and why him and not all of us? And so the guys are like, this is stupid. Like, this is a horrible thing we're doing. And Roger's like, no, seriously. We need to finish what we're doing, and we'll go back. It's fine. Everything's fine. So, like, whatever. So then it cuts to just Roger. He's coming back out of the woods, right? Didn't tell the other guys. He has Alex. Alex is going to be sacrificed for this ritual. And he was all like, oh, Alex left. Oh, God. Which part of me is like, I don't know how he expected to get away with that later. What, were they going to show back up into LA after the trip and be like, I don't know, Alex just disappeared. What? That's crazy. Because they all seem like they've been friends for a long time. So Roger is throwing Alex under the bus. He's using Alex in this ritual. He's got Alex and the indigenous people are there again, and they have the ritual going, and they have Alex in the coffin thing standing up, and he's like, dude, you don't have to do this. And he's like, I do, because apparently, according to the tribe, they're willing to give them this secret, right? They're willing to let them know what's going on, or like use their product or use their ritual, but they have to make a sacrifice. So that's the only way they'll let him have this secret. So he's like, all right, I don't know how Alex got the short end of the stick. Maybe he was more against it and everything. I mean, I think he might have been the one who called him evil. So he takes Alex out. So Alex is like, no. And so they pour the liquid down and they bury him in the ground. And that's how he ends up getting the secret, getting this herb that he can now sell and make a lot of money off of.
Roger.
No free lunch, buddy. Tribe demanded a trade. Wanted a sacrifice in exchange for their secrets. You.
We can't do this. All the way.
Came down here to go all the way.
But not like this. Roger, you can't do it. I mean, spread Roger. Roger, you can't do this. Roger. Spread.
Sorry.
Roger, you can't do this. No! Roger! No!
And so then it shows this witch doctor mask. Like there's a guy wearing a witch doctor type mask. I mean, I suppose that's what it is. Just like a tribal mask with the fringe and things hanging off of it. And then it cuts to that mask. So he has that mask present day with like a spear thing in his office, which is called Lassen. I think his last name is Lassen, Lassen, so Roger Lassen. So now it's present day. This woman who's like a secretary type thing, she comes in, she gives him like a mug of coffee or tea, and he's there with a guy who's doing an interview like on video. And he's like, oh, tell us all about your new preservative. So he opens up the cloche, and underneath it is 2 red delicious apples. He says they've been there, or they've had them for like 2 years. They were harvested 2 years ago, injected with this preservative. And now if you try them, they're super crunchy, fresh off the tree tasting. I don't know how much of the nutrition is still there or what would happen to your body with it. They don't really go into it. They don't really ask the question. But he says it's just as good. Everything's just as good. There's also implication that, you know, your wood wouldn't go bad. It can be injected into wood. It can be injected into your clothing. Your clothing would never fade or anything like that. I'm not sure how well that works, but they're like, yeah, just do it. The guy doing the interview is like, wow, that's impressive. And then the interview ends and Roger's still got a bad headache. So he's like coming out of the interview and popping more aspirin, just so much aspirin. And he runs into Colin. Well, Roger calls him Howard. It says Colin on IMDb. I'm not going to get too much into it. We'll just call him Howard. Who cares? So Charles Martin Smith is playing Howard. He comes up to Roger and he's like, hey, we're having a little bit of trouble with the FDA. So all this stuff with this death of Dan King and all this kind of things that are going around with this and like the robbery and things, they got wind of it. They're worried that there's a lot in stake with this deal. Germany's worried. Japan's worried. Like, we're not sure if we're going to get this deal. And so Roger's like, what? This is ridiculous. This needs to get approved. We need to get this approved now. So now Roger's in his office and he's getting hot. You know, he's like undoing his tie and everything. and he's taking all the aspirin. He just needs more aspirin. He even tells his secretary, like, give me more aspirin. And Howard is like, you need to see a doctor. All the stress and things are getting to you. Karma is gonna get to you. Roger's like, I could fire you. And he's like, you won't fire me. You need a guy like me to tell you when things are getting too crazy. Everyone needs one of those. Him and Roger kind of spat back and forth for a while. Howard's like, well, what about Kevin? This could be why this is going on or something like that. And it's weird because, like, after this trip, too, when they got back, it doesn't seem like they really talked all that much. Like, I think Roger stayed in touch with Dan, Costas Mandalore's character, who is now dead in the morgue. I mean, Alex died or was killed. And Kevin, I don't think he really ever talked to after 6 years. So it's, like, interesting that after all this time, this would come up. And so he's like, fine. Roger's like, fine, I will go and find out what's up with Kevin. So he goes to Kevin's apartment. Luckily, he's still in the same apartment after 6 years. Just comes up to his apartment like, hey, Kevin, what's up? And so he gets to the apartment and the door is slightly ajar. And he just comes in and he's like, Kevin, hey, it's me, Roger. I know we haven't talked in like 5 or 6 years. We need to talk about Brazil, just out of the blue. I'm like, okay. And it's kind of one of those dingy, like, I think they're, like I said, in LA. They may be in somewhere else now, but back in the day, they were heading back to LA. But it's kind of one of those dingy, like, kind of New York-y, LA cheap apartments where all the appliances are real small. So you have, like, a real small little stove, real small little fridge. There's, like, a dripping faucet. It's kind of dingy. It doesn't look great. There's also a radio playing here with tribal, like, jungle music. So I guess none of his neighbors care. I don't know. It wasn't that loud, but it was enough to cover up this dripping sound. So when Roger goes to turn the radio off, he hears the sound, he turns around, and it's that blue preservative, and it's dripping off of something onto this plate, like a lunch plate, dinner plate. And when he looks up to see where it's coming from, it's really not that high. But he looks up a little bit, and in the chair that he didn't notice is Kevin. And Kevin is dead. Kevin is very dead. He has also been injected with, 40 cc's or whatever. There's still some in the syringe. They didn't even put it all the way in. But into Kevin's neck. And I'm worried about what this preservative does to you because it was injected in his neck and it does not look great. I mean, they did a great job on the effects in this one, at least for these parts. Which is something considering the plot's fine, but it just didn't stand out to me that much on this one. Kevin's head is all swollen, his eyes are swollen shut and big, his lips are big, and there's a note stuck to his clothes, and it says that I have not forgotten nor forgiven. And so now Roger's pissed. He's pissed at Howard. I think he's thinking Howard is actually backstabbing him this whole time and not telling him, and how dare he, and sent me here, and now my prints are everywhere, makes it look like I killed Kevin. And Howard's sitting there just working in the break room. He grabs him, Howard throws up against the wall. Now this part coming up here, so far in the episodes I've watched, there's been gore, there's been blood, there's been parts where I'm like, oh, that's unsettling, things like that. So far, this is the episode that has made me cringe more than any other in one particular spot. So this spot coming up, Roger's yelling at Howard, and he's like, how could you, all this stuff. Howard's like, dude, you're stressed out. What are you doing? Why are you being like this? And so he picks up Howard, and he takes the back of his head, and he throws him onto this desk thing, or like I guess it's like a real sturdy, just big long table that you would have a meeting at. Kind of looks like a concrete slab. But at one point, he hits his face onto it, right? And I hate anything like that where you're like crushing noses. So he hits it the first time, brings back up, the guy's got a bloody nose. I'm like, okay, that's gross. So I'm literally sitting there watching the episode. He goes again, he hits it, smashes his face right into it, straight on, and kills him. And I literally like felt nauseated for like a split second and turned my head away. I was like, oh, it's a great effect. And the blood comes out from the top of his head, which is weird. I guess the table's on a slant. It's weird that the blood would flow that way and not pool around him, but still, it goes all over the place, and he bashes Howard's face into this table, and I was like, ooh, that's sickening. Like, I did not like that at all, and so far, I don't think I've had any episode that really, I mean, some have grossed me out, but not like that. Not to where I've literally flinched away from the screen. So now Clancy Brown's all frustrated, right, and he killed the guy. He just lays him there on the table in his office, and just as he's kind of backing off, he hears this voice, and there's this figure in the door talking to him, and he's like,
The one person in the world that actually liked you.
Alex, we're dead.
Nobody dies in Macumba voodoo, Roger. You know that. They're just raised and raised over and over forever.
What do you want?
Come on, Roger. I've spent 6 years in a voodoo curse. I haven't even changed my clothes yet, and that's all you have to say? Huh?
Jesus Christ. This isn't happening. There's something wrong with my mind. I'll fix it and you'll be gone.
Yes, you're mine. Caught your killer yet, Raj?
Leave me alone.
In a minute.
I had to do it, Alex. All the way, remember? We went down there to go all the way.
Sure, Raj, sure. Noticing anything unusual about these two pieces of paper, Roger? Oh, the handwriting's the same. You really want to find your killer, Roger? Really? Then take a good look in the mirror, because it's you. You killed him, Roger.
What's happening to me?
Your great controlled dark side, the one you're so proud of, it's out of its cage now, Roger. It's not even telling your other half what it's doing anymore. It's going to eat you alive.
This is impossible.
The world changes, Roger.
It's Alex. And he's standing there and you can't really quite see him. It's just like a dark figure. So you can't see his face. So Roger's like, Alex is dead. Alex is like, oh no, nobody dies in Macumba voodoo. And that's what they call it, Macumba voodoo. And I looked it up. It is a type of religion practiced in Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay. So that's kind of nice, or kind of cool that they used a real term. So he's like, yeah, nobody dies in Macumba voodoo. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Macumbe? Might be Macumbe. And so you get some light more on the situation and on this picture, and you see it is Alex. Alex is a zombie. Alex has been, I don't know if it took him 6 years to get here by walking, or how he got here. He was shipped here. He hung out. I mean, he says he's been hanging out in Brazil for a while. He hasn't even changed his clothes yet. He's just like a stinky zombie. And so Alex is like holding up some of the paperwork, the note with the forgiven, forgotten. And he's like, this handwriting looks familiar, doesn't it? And he points out, he's like, the handwriting's similar. Doesn't it look an awfully lot like yours? So what he's pointing out is that perhaps it's Roger doing these killings. You know, maybe he's just associating it's part of these headaches, I guess. It's his own karma, his own evil, whatever voodoo thing that's going on to him is making him do this and sabotage his company. And why Alex came all the way back here, I don't know, if he's just part of that. And the makeup on him's okay looking. Alex, I mean, it doesn't look that crazy. He just looks kind of gray and things like that. Alex is like, you have a dark side inside of you, which is kind of similar to like that voodoo doll that was like half and half. And so he's trying to tell him, he's like, Roger, this is you doing this. And he's like, no, screw you, I don't care. And so Roger gets mad, and he takes that spear that they showed earlier with the witch doctor mask, and he cuts off Alex's head, decapitates him right there. Blood kind of spurts out. Strange that he has that much flowing blood, considering he's a zombie, but maybe it's just a preservative, I don't know, in the way the ritual is. And he's just like, fucking zombies, or whatever, and leaves. And so what's weird about this scene right here is it just kind of cuts, and it seems like it's missing a part in a way. But so he just leaves this decapitated zombie guy and a guy with his face smashed in at his company and leaves. Doesn't try to hide it, just bye. And so now it just cuts back to his house. So now you're just back at the apartment, and the door opens, and in comes Cheech Marin. Cheech Marin is playing Dr. Benaloy, and he's been called somehow Roger knew about this guy. He's a doctor, obviously comes in. He's like, I need your help. I'll give you anything. I'll give you this. I mean, I'm rich. Look at this apartment. I'll give you everything. I just need you to fix what's going on with me and what's going on with whatever, this ritual, this doll, everything. So I don't know if he remembers. I'm assuming Benaloy, Cheech Marin, was the witch doctor from Brazil, but maybe not. Because it's kind of hard to tell who's doing this to Roger, at least for me. Who left the voodoo doll? Was it Cheech Marin? Was it Alex? Did Roger do it himself? And so he's sitting there in his seat, and Cheech Marin's like, yeah, this is,
It's voodoo, Mr. Lassen.
Thanks, Doc. You gotta be a little bit more vague.
It's called a shoe. A harnessing of the two-faced God that controls the coexistence of good and evil. When this voodoo is released, it destroys that balance. There are the usual symptoms: perspiration, heart palpitations, homicidal blackouts, suicide.
Fix it.
Mr. Lassen, the treatment can be problematic.
No, man, you don't understand. You gotta fix it.
Or what?
You gotta help me. It's Alex that did this. God damn. I can't stop what's going on inside me. I'll pay, man. I will pay.
Yes, of course, you will. The only treatment for a shoe is called krilati. It kills the curse by destroying the evil half of the person attached.
Okay.
But in a case as clearly advanced as yours, there is one small snagette.
What?
It'll probably kill you.
So then they cut to doing this ritual, and he's laying out on this table. And I mean, it's an okay scene. He's just laying there on the table. Cheech Marin comes out with this makeup on and like a robe and a headpiece or a headdress type thing, and comes at him and he's screaming. And then it cuts to later back at the apartment. He still hasn't cleaned anything off the wall. It still has the message, the whole forgiven and forgotten thing. He's sitting in the seat, and now this, in his chair, there's like a love seat, or like I guess it's like a love seat or recliner type thing in front of the door. There's like some little stairs coming down to the living room, and then there's the front door. This scene I did remember. I remember this situation when I saw that. I was like, okay, yeah, I think I remember what's coming up. And so he calls the secretary, I think her name was Miss Withers or something, and he's like, girl, I mean, he doesn't say that, but he's like, girl, I need you to bring over like 200 cc's of the preservative. And she's like, that's the rest of our experimental stock, which part of me is like, that's all you have? Are you about, is there other stock? Because like, it seems like if you're going into production after 6 years and all you have is 200 cc's, considering that one guy took 40 cc's to kill him or whatever, like it doesn't seem like a whole lot, but I was like, fine, whatever. He's like, yes, bring me all that. She's like, did you also know there are dead bodies here? She's like, everything's going crazy. There's dead people. He's like, I don't care, just bring me the stuff. And so she shows up and it's dark. They're doing another like dark shadow thing, right? And she's like, hey, she comes in, and I'm like, this poor woman, she's just trying to work. And she comes in and she's got the stuff in like a little bag. She's like, I got the syringe and all that stuff. And he's like, come in.
Did you bring the syringe and the Exdion B?
Yes? What is it that you want me to do, Mr. Lassen?
Bring it to me. I beat him with this. I beat that son of a bitch. Alex thought he had me, but he was wrong. See, there is a way to beat the curse. Destroy your evil half. The half that the curse feeds on. Then Aloy did it. Before it could completely destroy me, he killed my evil half.
But he turns on the light and she sees his face and she screams, and you go back to his face. I think the thing with this episode is it really isn't that scary, or, I mean, it's got a couple gross parts and uncomfortable parts, but this guy's been a jerk the whole time and he hasn't seemed like a great guy. So it's not like, it's like everyone kind of gets screwed in this episode in a way. I guess it's just like, don't mess with voodoo. I don't know. I mean, it's just kind of a weird, it seems a bit pointless in the episode. It's not like it's a horrible, horrible episode, but it just doesn't really do anything. Like, I wouldn't, if I was going to suggest episodes to someone to check out Tales from the Crypt, even obscure episodes, I don't think I'd put this on here. But it cuts to Clancy Brown's face, and half of it is fine. It's his face. The other half has looked like it's been mutilated. It's bleeding. It's been like chopped up and everything to his lips and stuff. And I guess that was his evil side. Kind of like the voodoo doll. Exactly like the voodoo doll, you know? It's all red. That's his evil side. Now he has like the whole like 200 cc's in a syringe, and he's going to put it into his neck on the good side, which is weird. I feel like you would inject it into the dead side, but okay. So I guess what he's wanting to do is make sure his other half of his face or half of his body doesn't rot. So he's putting this preservative in, but it's like you still, I mean, he's gone crazy. Because like he still looks horrible. Like he looks, like I said, not halfway horrible, all the way horrible. Oh, wait, okay, yeah, I get that. I didn't think about that at first. Yeah, halfway horrible. Huh, yeah, I get that title now. Because half is horrible. You know what? Fine. Whatever. This episode's fine. It just, I don't know if I'd watch it again anytime soon, ever. So he's like, yeah, I need to preserve it, whatever. He's gone crazy. No one cares. That woman needs to just run. And then it just cuts away. That's the end of the episode. And so it cuts back to the Crypt Keeper. He's still in his salon. He's having a great time.
Crypt Keeper, you're so punny.
And the best Crypt Keeper pun is,
well, at least in the end, Roger knew right from wrong. If only he'd learned a little faster.
And that's it. That's the end of the episode. That's the end of season 5, episode 12. There is no IMDb trivia for this episode. Again, it was fine. I mean, I don't know, watching it a second or third time to kind of review over it again, it's a little better, but it still just really doesn't, it seems like it kind of drags, even though it's not that long of an episode, and there's a lot of filler, it seems like, for a basic plot. Season 5, episode 12, Halfway Horrible. The next episode is season 5, episode 13, Till Death Do We Part. I want to thank you all so much for downloading and listening to this episode. Please feel free to subscribe, leave a review. I have a new review, actually, that recently came in not too long ago. I thought I would read it. It was from iTunes or Apple Podcasts. So I have a review here from Bry Paul the Writer, 5 stars. Nice, short, and sweet reviews. I've only listened to a few episodes so far, but what I like most is how swift and breezy these are to listen to. Not too much time taken up by technical criticisms. These are more responses than reviews, and that's not a bad thing. Tales from the Crypt is one of my favorite shows to rewatch, despite not being a big horror fanatic, and I also have a decent collection of reprinted EC comics. I'm less of a gratuitous blood splatter type and more into macabre and dark comedy. Melissa seems to have similar tastes. So thank you so much, Bry Paul the Writer, for that 5-star review. If you two out there would like to leave one, you can leave it on Podcast Republic, iTunes, or on Facebook, and I'll be sure to read it on an upcoming episode. You can also follow the Facebook page for the Good Evening Kitties podcast. There is a Twitter page as well at @GEK Podcast. That's @GEK Podcast. Again, thank you all so much for listening, and have a good one.
I just had quite a